A notorious murder case from the 1980s is generating a new wave of public attention. People magazine recently profiled Sandy Shaw, a central figure in the so-called show and tell murder in 1986.
A new book, co-written by Shaw, is now available. She was just 16 when she became the youngest female ever sent to a Nevada prison, where she ultimately served 21 years for a crime she did not commit.
She spoke with Chief Investigator George Knapp. George?
Yeah, anyone who lived in Las Vegas in the 80s would likely remember the shocking headlines and a very quick trial. But what happened to Sandy Shaw after she was shipped away to prison is not nearly as sensational. She does not claim to be completely innocent, only innocent of the crime that sent her away, presumably for life.
I went in as a kid, I came out as an adult.
Sandy Shaw was 15 years old when she was arrested for her part in the show and tell murder of James Kelly, a 24-year-old Canadian visitor. At her trial, a mere 4 months later, she was described as a, quote, teenage temptress and cold-blooded killer who had lured Kelly out to the desert to rob and murder him with the help of 2 older teens. The most ghoulish allegation was that Shaw supposedly brought multiple friends out to see the body. Shaw was sentenced to 2 terms of life in prison without parole and was sent away to Nevada's maximum security prison in Carson City, where her age and notoriety put a bullseye on her head.
People wanted to be my mom, they wanted to be my dad, my brother, my sister, my lover, And then, some people would say, hey, little girl, are you ready to come out and play with the big girls? And I was like, oh, boy.
From day one, Shaw was a target and had to defend herself. She rebelled against authority, was written up for various infractions. Hundreds of strangers wrote to her every week, some with ulterior motives. One of her pen pals was Patrick McKenna, the most feared prisoner on Nevada's death row. McKenna had escaped twice from Nevada's maximum security prison. He also helped inmates in a bloody takeover of a Las Vegas jail.
Did he say he could help you get out?
Oh, yeah, he said, if you ever want to escape, just let me know. I'll get you out of there. But yeah, no, he actually gave me a lot of good advice.
Shaw also crossed paths with another infamous Sandy Murphy, convicted of killing casino kingpin Ted Binion, a conviction later overturned. Was the prison big enough for 2 Sandys?
We did. We did not get along. I didn't extend a big, huge welcome or let's be like friends,
But she did make some lasting friendships, one of those with journalist Dan Gleason, who in 2005 started writing to and visiting Shaw. His idea for a magazine piece eventually grew into a book, just released. Life Without is the title. It digs into Shaw's turbulent upbringing and examines troubling questions about her trial and about the victim, James Cotton Kelly, supposedly a naive tourist, but in reality, a grown man in his mid-20s who'd been stalking 15-year-old Sandy for months, had even offered her money to pose nude. Writer Gleason was appalled by the way Kelly was characterized in the trial.
And he even said this, something like, he is the Canadian version of the all-American boy. He would never stalk a woman, a young girl like that. And the jury accepted it because there was nothing that said he wasn't.
What was withheld from the defense was a report from Canadian law enforcement stating that James Kelly was an alias, a made-up name, that the dead man's father, mother, and other relatives were major narcotics traffickers, suggesting Kelly was in Las Vegas not as a tourist, but to launder drug money. One of his uncles was later busted in Las Vegas in possession of more than 800 grams of cocaine. Shaw and her mom had gone to Metro Police to report that Kelly was a stalker who would not leave Sandy alone, but no action was taken, so Sandy decided to deal with it herself. She asked a friend since childhood, Troy Kell, to help her scare Kelly into backing off. Kell brought along a friend, Billy Merritt, for the ride out into a desert area. One of them brought a gun, and instead of slapping Kelly around, they shot him in the head. Shaw says she was shocked.
In setting Mr. Kelly up to be beat up, I take full responsibility for that. I always have. But, I've never physically, harmed anybody or, wanted to harm him. I didn't want him to lose his life.
Also not introduced were statements from both Kell and Merritt that Sandy didn't know about the gun or their intention to kill the victim. Their notarized statements clearing Shaw weren't made public until years after Sandy went to prison. Another witness, Dave Fletcher, was prepared to testify that Shaw did not participate in the murder and did not bring classmates out to see the body. Fletcher admitted years later that he was pressured by prosecutors to change his testimony or face prosecution prosecution himself. Another witness, a former friend of Shaw's, testified that Shaw bragged about shooting Kelly between the eyes, cutting his throat, and blowing up his car, none of which ever happened. That testimony not only convicted Shaw, but kept her in prison.
Their main witness, her testimony, it was a complete lie. It's a complete lie that they used as a statement of facts throughout my entire incarceration of going to the parole board, the pardons board.
The new book explains how a more mature Shaw turned her life around in prison, earned a high school diploma and college degrees, and hoped that she would someday get out. The late attorney Bill Terry helped make that happen and convinced state officials that the trial and unusual sentencing were way out of line. After 21 years behind bars, Shaw was finally paroled and years later received a full pardon.
Going to prison was just horrifying. It was just terrible. But when I look back in a mature frame of mind, I say, like everything happens for a reason, and maybe going to prison, actually probably saved my life.
The prosecutor in the original case, Dan Seaton, was a ferocious litigator who handled many high-profile murder cases of that era. He told us the last time we spoke that he was tough, but didn't cross any lines in the Shaw prosecution. Shaw's new book paints a different picture and notes that 2 of Seaton's murder cases were overturned by the Nevada State Supreme Court late in his career. Back to you.
George, thanks for that. And if you want to hear more of one of these kind of stories from George Knapp, 8 News Now Vegas is your place to go, including the newly relaunched Mystery Wire.